July 5, 1960, Newport Jazz Festival, Rhode Island. Ella Fitzgerald stood before thousands of people, a live radio broadcast carrying her voice across America, about to sing the second verse of Mack the Knife, and her mind went completely blank. She couldn't remember a single word. This is the story of what happened in the 3 minutes that followed, of a split-second choice to improvise instead of stop, of making up lyrics in real time about forgetting the lyrics, and of how the worst moment of Ella's career became her greatest triumph, a recording that would top the charts, win a Grammy, and be remembered as one of the most brilliant improvised performances in jazz history. The Newport Jazz Festival was everything in 1960. Founded in 1954, it had become the most prestigious jazz event in America, the place where legends were made, where one performance could define a career. Miles Davis, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong had all played there. And in July 1960, the festival was broadcasting live on Voice of America radio, reaching not just thousands in attendance but hundreds of thousands listening across the nation. Ella Fitzgerald was 42 that summer, already established as one of the greatest vocalists in American music, 26 years since that Apollo Theater win in 1934. Multiple Grammy Awards, the iconic songbook series, respected, celebrated, internationally famous, but Newport was different. Newport wasn't a controlled studio where you could do multiple takes. Newport was live, outdoors, in front of thousands of serious jazz fans and critics who knew every standard, every lyric, every variation. There was no safety net. Ella's performance was scheduled for the evening of Tuesday, July 5th. She'd performed at Newport before, always successfully, always to great acclaim. But this year she wanted to surprise people. She wanted to show range, prove she could do more than just sophisticated standards. She decided to sing Mack the Knife. The song had complicated history. Originally written in 1928 by Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill for the Threepenny Opera, it told the story of Macheath, Mack the Knife, a murderous criminal. The English lyrics had been around for decades, but the song had exploded into mainstream popularity thanks to Bobby Darin's 1959 recording, which topped charts and won Record of the Year. Louis Armstrong had also recorded a famous version. Between Darin and Armstrong, Mack the Knife had become one of the most popular songs in America. Ella wanted to put her stamp on it. Take this pop hit and make it jazz, bring her sophistication and vocal artistry to what some dismissed as a novelty song. Show she could do anything, pop, jazz, standards, whatever the moment required. Her team was nervous about the choice. Paul Smith, her pianist and musical director, raised concerns. Mack the Knife wasn't Ella's usual style. It was narrative-driven, theatrical, required telling a specific story with specific details rather than just interpreting melody and emotion the way she normally did with standards. The lyrics are very particular, Paul warned. Names, sequence of events. If you forget one line, the whole story falls apart. It's not like a love song where you can improvise around the theme. I've heard it 100 times, Ella said. Bobby's version is on the radio constantly. Louis's version too. I know the song. But have you memorized it? Actually sat down and learned every word? Ella hesitated. She'd heard it many times, yes. She knew the general shape of it, but memorized every single lyric in order. Not exactly. I'll be fine, she said with confidence she didn't entirely feel. I've been doing this for 26 years. I can handle one pop song. But there was a problem she didn't fully acknowledge to anyone, including herself. She hadn't really learned all the lyrics properly. Ella had heard Bobby Darin's version dozens of times on the radio. She knew Louis Armstrong's version from his recordings. She understood the general story. Mack the Knife was a criminal who murdered people and got away with it. There were references to victims named Jenny Diver and Suki Tawdry, something about cement bags weighing someone down in the river. Bodies disappearing, fancy gloves hiding bloodstains. She'd rehearsed it a few times with her band in the weeks before Newport, running through it casually during sound checks and practice sessions. But she hadn't memorized it the way she normally memorized songs, line by line, word by word, until they were embedded in muscle memory. She figured she could rely on her ear, her experience, her improvisational skills. After all, she was Ella Fitzgerald. She'd improvised her way through countless performances over 2.5 decades. She could scat over any chord changes, find melody in any harmonic structure. How hard could it be to remember or improvise around one pop song? The day of the Newport performance, July 5th, Ella was more nervous than usual, not terrified but aware that this was high stakes. Newport wasn't just any gig. This was being broadcast live. Critics would be listening. Other musicians would be in the audience. One performance here could be talked about for years. The evening of July 5th was perfect for an outdoor concert. Warm but not hot, clear skies, gentle breeze. The festival field at Freebody Park was packed, thousands of people sitting on blankets and folding chairs stretching back as far as you could see. The radio broadcast crew had microphones positioned carefully, capturing everything. Ella took the stage around 8:45 p.m. The moment she walked out, the audience erupted. This was Ella Fitzgerald. You didn't get bigger than this. The applause lasted almost a minute. She opened with familiar territory. Let's Do It, a Cole Porter standard she'd sung hundreds of times. Then You're Driving Me Crazy. Songs she could perform in her sleep. Songs where her voice could shine without any worry about lyrics. The crowd loved it. Her voice was in excellent form that night, clear, powerful, expressive. Her band was tight, everything was going perfectly. After about 30 minutes, she introduced Mack the Knife. I'd like to do a song, she said to the audience, that's been very, very popular, made famous by Mr. Bobby Darin, and before him by the wonderful Louis Armstrong. So we'd like to try our hand at Mack the Knife. The band launched into the upbeat, swinging arrangement. Ella came in strong. Oh, the shark has pretty teeth, dear, and he shows them pearly white, just a jackknife has mash-teeth, dear, and he keeps it out of sight, perfect. First verse down, her voice sounded great, the tempo was right, the audience was engaged. She was feeling confident. Second verse, when the shark bites with his teeth, dear, scarlet billows start to spread. And then, nothing. Her mind went blank, completely, utterly blank. She couldn't remember the next line, couldn't remember anything about scarlet billows or fancy gloves or whatever came next. For a fraction of a second, Ella felt pure panic. Thousands of people watching. Radio broadcast live, band playing behind her expecting her to sing. The melody continuing, the chord changes happening, the space where her voice should be getting longer and more obvious. She had maybe 2 seconds to make a choice, stop the song, apologize, start over, or push through somehow. In that split second, Ella Fitzgerald made the decision that would define this performance. She decided to improvise, not just improvise melody, improvise the entire concept. She'd sing about what was actually happening. She'd forgotten the lyrics. She came back in, making it up as she went. Oh, what's the next chorus to this song now? This is the one now, I don't know. The audience started laughing, not mockingly, but with delight. She was being honest, admitting the mistake, making it part of the show. Ella kept going, building on the idea. But it was a swinging tune, and it's a hit tune, so we tried to do Mack the Knife, more laughter, more applause. People were leaning forward now, realizing they were witnessing something special. This wasn't a mistake being covered up, this was a mistake being transformed into art. Ella's band was following her perfectly, staying with the chord changes, maintaining the groove. They'd played with her long enough to follow wherever she went, and she was going somewhere nobody had planned. She started referencing the other famous versions. Bobby Darin and Louis Armstrong, they made a record. Oh, but they did, and now Ella and her fellas were making a wreck. What a wreck of Mack the Knife, the crowd was roaring now. Making a wreck, she just made fun of herself, acknowledged she was messing up the song and made it hilarious and musically brilliant at the same time. But Ella wasn't done. She kept building, kept improvising, turning this into a full performance. Oh, Snooky Tawdry, bless my soul, and Suki Tawdry. Oh, Miss Lot Lenya was a girl who did appear. Wait, those weren't even the right character names. She'd mixed up Suki Tawdry with Snooky something, and who was Miss Lot Lenya? Actually, Lot Lenya was the actress who'd originated the role in the 1928 German production. Ella was pulling from deep memory, throwing in random theatrical references. The audience didn't care. They were watching a master improviser at work, someone so skilled she could forget lyrics and still create something compelling. Ella scattered through sections, making up words, referencing things that may or may not have been in the original. Oh, the shark has such white teeth, dear, and he shows them. They're pearly white, just a jackknife has mash-teeth, dear, and he keeps it way out of sight. She'd circled back to the first verse again, repeating what she actually knew, but doing it with such confidence and swing that it felt intentional. Then more improvisation. You know, when that shark bites with his teeth, babe's scarlet billows begin to spread, but fancy gloves wears mash-teeth. Babe, so there's not a trace of red. She'd gotten some of the real lyrics mixed in there. Her memory was coming back in pieces, triggered by the melody and the momentum of performing. The band was cooking now. The piano player was grinning. The bassist was locked in the groove. Everyone on stage was riding this improvised wave with Ella, supporting every twist and turn. Ella kept going for another full minute, mixing real lyrics with made-up ones, scatting, making jokes, referencing Darin and Louis Armstrong, admitting she didn't know the words while simultaneously creating something brilliant out of not knowing. At one point she sang, "Look out, old Masheath's back in town," which was actually a real line from the song. She'd remembered it. But by this point, with all the improvisation around it, even the real lyrics sounded like part of the joke. Finally, after more than 3 minutes of improvised brilliance, she brought it home with big finish, the band hitting the final chord and Ella holding her last note with perfect control. The audience exploded, not just applause, they were on their feet, cheering, laughing, shouting. It was one of the most joyous reactions Newport had ever witnessed. Ella smiled, slightly breathless, amazed at what had just happened. She'd forgotten the lyrics, panicked for half a second, then turned it into one of the most entertaining performances of her career. "Thank you," she said to the crowd, laughing. "I hope Darin and Louis Armstrong forgive me for that." More cheers, more applause. Backstage after the show, people kept approaching Ella. "That was incredible. The way you improvised, I've never seen anything like that." Ella was gracious but still slightly embarrassed. "I really did forget the words," she admitted. Her band, that wasn't planned. "It was better than if you'd known them," her piano player said. Norman Granz, Ella's manager and the founder of Verve Records, had been in the audience. He found Ella backstage immediately. "We're releasing that," he said. "What? That performance? We recorded it for the Voice of America broadcast. We're releasing it as a single." "Norman, I forgot half the lyrics." "Exactly. And what you created instead was better than the original song." "Trust me on this." Ella wasn't convinced. The performance had been fun, the audience had enjoyed it, but releasing it, making it permanent. She was supposed to be the great interpreter of standards, the vocalist with impeccable technique. This was her making up nonsense words and admitting she didn't know the song. "People will think I'm unprofessional," Ella worried. "People will think you're brilliant," Norman countered. "Because you are. You took a mistake and turned it into art. That's what makes you Ella Fitzgerald." Norman won the argument. Verve Records released Ella's Newport performance of Mack the Knife as a single in late 1960, included as part of the live album Ella in Berlin, even though it was recorded in Newport. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Radio stations started playing it within days, not just jazz stations, pop stations too. The performance had crossover appeal many of her studio recordings lacked. It was funny, accessible, showed personality. The record sold hundreds of thousands of copies in the first few months, more than many of her carefully prepared studio recordings. By early 1961, it had become one of the best-selling singles of her entire career. People loved it specifically because of the forgotten lyrics. The moment where she sang, "Oh, what's the next chorus to this song now? This is the one now, I don't know," became iconic. People quoted it. Comedians referenced it. Radio DJs would introduce it. "Here's Ella Fitzgerald forgetting the words and winning anyway." Critics praised it effusively. Ella Fitzgerald's Newport Mack the Knife is a masterclass in improvisation, wrote Leonard Feather in Downbeat. She forgets the words and creates something more entertaining than the original. Musicians were particularly impressed. The ability to forget lyrics mid-performance on live broadcast in front of thousands and not just recover but create something better. That required confidence, skill, and creativity most performers didn't possess. Darin heard the recording and loved it. "Ella made my hit song even better by forgetting it," he said, laughing. Louis Armstrong grinned. "That's my Ella. She can make magic out of thin air." The recording captured something rare, spontaneous creativity under pressure, real improvisation happening in real time. A moment when technique and humor and musical intelligence all converged to create something unrepeatable. In February 1961, at the third annual Grammy Awards held at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Los Angeles, Ella Fitzgerald arrived not entirely sure what to expect. She'd been nominated for Best Female Vocal Performance for Mack the Knife, the live Newport recording where she'd forgotten half the lyrics. She was competing against carefully prepared studio recordings by other major artists. Recordings where every word was perfect, every note rehearsed, every take selected from dozens of attempts, and here was Ella, nominated for a performance where she'd literally admitted mid-song that she didn't know the words. "You're going to win," Norman Granz told her before the ceremony. "Norman, I forgot the lyrics," Ella said, still embarrassed even months later, "and created something better than if you'd remembered them. That's why you're going to win." The category was announced, Best Female Vocal Performance. The nominees were read. When they opened the envelope and said Ella Fitzgerald, Mack the Knife, Ella was genuinely shocked. She walked to the stage, accepted the Grammy, her first for a live performance, her first for something that had started as a complete mistake, and gave a short, gracious speech. "I want to thank Bobby Darin and Louis Armstrong for letting me make a wreck of their song," she said, to laughter and applause from the industry crowd. "I really did forget the words, but I had a good band behind me and we made it work. Thank you." Backstage afterward, reporters asked her about the win. "How does it feel to win a Grammy for forgetting lyrics?" Ella laughed. "It feels strange, honestly. I've spent my whole career trying to get everything perfect, and the one time I mess up completely, that's what people love. I guess there's a lesson in there somewhere." What's the lesson? Maybe that perfection isn't always what connects with people. Maybe they want to see you be human, see you make mistakes and recover, see you be real. The Grammy win cemented the Newport Mack the Knife as legendary. It wasn't just a fun live recording anymore, it was Grammy validated, officially recognized as one of the best vocal performances of the year. Ella had beaten her own studio recordings. She'd beaten carefully prepared performances by other major artists. She'd won with improvised lyrics about not knowing the lyrics. Years later, when asked about the Newport performance, Ella would smile and say, "I really did forget the words. I wasn't trying to be clever. I just didn't know what came next, so I sang about not knowing. Turns out that was the right choice." "Did you ever actually learn the real lyrics?" interviewers would ask. "No," Ella would admit, laughing. "Why mess with success? My version won the Grammy." The Newport Mack the Knife became one of Ella's signature recordings. Not her most technically perfect performance, far from it, but one of her most human, most joyful, most revealing of her brilliance. It showed what real artistry looked like, not perfection, but the ability to transform imperfection into something beautiful. Not avoiding mistakes, but dancing with them. Not stopping when you forget the words, but inventing new ones that work even better. July 5, 1960. Newport Jazz Festival. Ella Fitzgerald forgetting lyrics. 3 minutes of improvised genius. A Grammy Award. A legend born from a blank mind. Bobby Darin and Louis Armstrong had made records. Ella and her fellas made a wreck, and that wreck became immortal.